Baltimore's 50th mayor convicted of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and 2 counts of tax evasion. Yesterday, she was indicted on 11 criminal charges, and today, she pleaded guilty to 4 of them.
And there's the video that we see right behind us. WMAR 2 News investigative reporter Mallory Safosny was at the courthouse today and joins us live right now. Everybody wants to know, did the mayor speak, and did she have anything to say?
Jamie, the former mayor didn't say anything. She did leave the courtroom holding back tears. In just under 2 hours, the government explained in great length all the evidence they have to support Pugh's admission of guilt and a fraud scheme dating back to 2011. A solemn Catherine Pugh leaving the federal courthouse in Baltimore after pleading guilty to fraud and tax evasion charges.
The facts to which Ms. Pugh admitted in federal court just a few minutes ago were lengthy and extensive, and they demonstrate just how complex and sophisticated the fraud schemes were in which she engaged over the course of years.
According to the government, over the course of around 7 years, Pugh used her self-published Healthy Holly book series to defraud purchasers, such as the University of Maryland Medical System, for which she served as a board member. UMMS gave Pugh multiple payments of $100,000 as recently as 2018 in exchange for 20,000 copies of the different versions of her books. Instead of having the books donated to the city school system as part of their agreement, Pugh admitted to keeping some of the books for her own use, which included reselling them to other buyers under the pretense that they would again be donated to charity. She also used money from the sales, along with the help of her aide, Gary Brown Jr., to make illegal contributions to her mayoral campaign. In addition, the profits were not properly disclosed on her taxes.
Both she and Mr. Brown went to some lengths in order to not only to engage in this fraud scheme, which included double selling books or not delivering books that she'd received payment for, but also in order to cover up the income and to reduce her tax liability.
U.S. Attorney Robert Hur saying the 2 created phony invoices, which led to fake forms being submitted to the IRS. Hur calling Pugh's actions a derailment to the leadership the city needs.
I would say this was a significant betrayal of the public trust, and it is absolutely not what we need from our leaders in order to address the significant problems that Baltimore City is facing.
In the plea agreement, the government is recommending 5 years in prison. However, sentencing will be completely up to the judge. A sentencing date has been set for February 27th of next year. And I'm joined by Andy Alperstein, a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. And Andy, let's just start, why plead guilty? She was indicted yesterday. What's kind of the strategy in that?
Well, I think it's clear that there was some agreement already in place before yesterday. That doesn't just happen out of the blue like that. Defendants usually plead guilty early in a case, 1 or 2 reasons. Either the evidence against them is overwhelming, or they're going to get a benefit, or even that the evidence is it's just going to get worse by going to trial. So it seems clear from reading the indictment, listening to the facts today, it was a strong case. You had multiple people, multiple agencies and businesses that were donating money to her, all saying the same things. They don't know each other, they don't have bias, they're not connected to each other. It makes her a fairly strong case. The former mayor, has good lawyers, very good lawyers, excellent folks, and they're not going to plead her guilty if they didn't think they were getting some benefit. The benefit comes in a couple forms. It comes in certain counts were dismissed. We saw the mayor plead guilty to 4 counts today. Many others were dismissed. In addition, there was a sentencing concession by the state, by the government. The original charges were over 100 years in exposure. Now, that's not practical. She's not going to get a sentence of over 100 years, but if you added up the maximums. So that's shrunk down. Also, in federal court, there's sentencing guidelines, which are recommended sentences to the court in terms of what the sentence should be. It's a formula. It calculates the background of somebody who's charged. It also calculates things about the offense. So you're looking at the crime itself, the amount of the fraud, whether there was a breach of the public trust, leadership role. All this goes into a formula. It calculates over to a term of months, and that comes to about 5 years, and that's, I'm sure, why the government's recommending that.
So the max sentence for those 4 counts that she did plead guilty to comes to around, 35 years, but we're looking at around 5 as a recommendation. Is that low? Is that normal for this kind of crime?
Well, that's what the guidelines look like so far. So the way this works is that when you negotiate a federal plea, the defense and the United States Attorney's Office, that's the prosecutor, are going to negotiate a bunch of factors. That's typically how it happens. We haven't seen the actual written plea agreement, but that's normally how it happens. And that's going to lead to this formula I was talking about. It doesn't mean that that's the final number that goes to the judge in terms of these guidelines, and the guidelines aren't mandatory on the court. They're recommendations to the judge. So the judge doesn't have to stay within that range. Like I said, the range comes to around 5 years. It's a term of months, a little below, a little above. But the United States Probation Department is going to also do a report. And when they do their report, it might be different. I imagine it's probably not, but it could be. And then ultimately the judge can do whatever the judge wants from the minimum to the maximum. What's interesting in this case, unlike a lot of other cases, there's no mandatory minimums. So some people who are charged with certain crimes, the court can't go below a certain number. In this case, there's no such restriction on the judge.
All right, thank you, Andy. We'll see you in February. Appreciate it. I'll send it back to you in the studio.